Hi guys, Ashley here. Today I'm bringing you Lauren Hallanan all the way from the States. We're going to talk about China, discrimination, and what's to come after COVID-19. Lauren, welcome on the show.
Hi, thanks for having me, Ashley.
Lauren, you are right now in New York, if I'm not mistaken. And we all know that in the past couple of days, things escalated quickly. So first of all, how are you doing?
Good. Like I was just telling you before we got on the call, luckily I'm not right in New York City, but I am really grateful to be in New York State right now, though, because I think our New York State political leadership has been doing a really good job of, taking the reins with this matter and really recognizing that New York State's been hit hard and we need to take some, extreme measures similar to what China did, and really get this thing under control. And so I'm actually super grateful. I'm grateful that I'm not in the epicenter down near New York City. I'm outside of the city. I'm further away from where the most cases are. But like I was saying, we do have cases up here. I'm not completely isolated from it, but I am just really grateful because other parts of the country still aren't taking the extreme measures that they really need to. And it's really been amazing to see how some of the state governments like New York State and California, some other states have just really stepped up and started implementing some really serious measures to get this under control. So I do feel pretty lucky to be in one of those states that's actually trying to handle this issue.
Acting on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's absolutely beautiful. You've been living in China for the longest time. You've been blogging in China. You have been working for a China-focused company for also many years. What is your take on the impact of COVID-19? Do you personally feel that it has changed a lot in the China market, both for consumers and for businesses?
It's really twofold because it's very interesting how, I've been dealing, even though I'm here in the US, I've been dealing with the coronavirus since it started in China, so I feel like I've been dealing with it for 2 months, 2.5 months already before it even came here. So I think it's been really interesting where, a lot of the conversation that was being had was among businesses here in the US was, okay, how do we deal with what's going on in China? And now all of a sudden China's recovering, but then all of the headquarters over here in the US are like shutting down, having to work from home, dealing with that. So I think it's been really interesting. It's had a huge impact, but it's definitely been interesting to see how that impact and conversation has changed over the past, even just the past 1 to 2 weeks. Everything's really been shut down. And unfortunately, I think that, while things are recovering in China, it is going to be difficult for a lot of the brands that are, headquartered in Europe or the US, because even though China's recovering, they're not really going to be able to, I think, ramp things up and get their China market efforts back to normal, because now their staff here in the US and Europe is all working from home, offices and stores are shut down, supply chains are messed up. So I think that's going to be really interesting. Actually, I think it's a huge opportunity for Chinese domestic brands, because a lot of these US brands, a lot of the brands that are relying on cross-border, they're not going to be able to be providing supplies or being as efficient with their China operations for the next month or two, but Chinese consumers are getting back to normal. They want to buy things, they want to go out shopping, so I think that this is actually we're going to see a lot of Chinese domestic brands really stepping up and taking a lot of the market share, because they're able to get back up and running right now and fill that demand.
I totally agree with you. Earlier today, I was speaking with a friend of mine, and he basically for the past week was out and about Shanghai. Parks are full, business as normal. Of course, some industries are impacted more than others, and offline first businesses and some entrepreneurs are suffering. But essentially, from the life perspective, it's getting very, very close to where it was in terms of consumption in rich cities. It stays very strong. But in some lower tier cities, we definitely see the downgrade in consumption. So we're going to see what I like to call, this kind of polarization. Those that were already well off are going to continue going up and upgrade, and kind of there will be a huge rebound in consumption. But those that were just starting on this, middle class journey, they will probably go back, and their sentiment is completely different. They're really afraid, and many of them are obviously less protected parts of society. Some of them lost their jobs, some of them, because of the quarantine, were not able to return to their place of employment. So it's very interesting what's happening within the market as well. And I agree that local
And I
brands
think,
yeah.
no, I was just gonna say that I think that we're seeing exactly the same thing happening here in the US, even though it's only been a week or two. It's
Oh,
exactly
really?
the
So
same thing.
quick?
Whereas luckily people who are fortunate like me to be more, I guess you could say, like knowledge workers, I work from home, I can work from anywhere, so yes, the virus has had an impact on my life, but not an enormous impact. But yet I know a ton of people who have lost their jobs, or they're just out of work while all their businesses are closed. And so for these people, their sentiment, their feelings are much stronger. There's a lot more anger, or just depression. There's a lot more feelings around it. Whereas I'm like, okay, I got to stay safe. I'm concerned about my family and friends, but it's not having as much of an impact on me, from a professional career standpoint. It's not going to have as big of an impact on my life. So I feel like what you're saying about China, we're seeing, unfortunately, the same exact thing happening in the US, where kind of different classes in society are really going to come out of this crisis differently.
Absolutely. And to your point of Chinese brands stepping up, again, totally agree. I also see that in terms of Western brands, many of them are right now actually looking at China as a savior, because their global business is perhaps not going to recover within 2 months. Let's be realistic. China came out of it very fast and very strongly because they took extreme measures. And right now, the rest of the world will have to probably find out their formula, which is not going to be identical to China. So many global brands are looking at saying, okay, we're probably going to lose a lot of global business, but at least China is recovering. So let's focus a little bit there. But because of their global operations are impaired, it's also not that easy. So when it comes to domestic brands, which ones, in which categories do you feel are going to actually capture most opportunities?
Oh, I hadn't really thought about that. I mean, let me see. Probably the apparel and beauty industry is probably, I think that a lot of, or pretty much any industry where the production supply chain, is maybe, or not production supply chain, actually, I should say, especially a lot of companies that currently rely on like cross-border, they're not going to be able to ship to China. If any part of their manufacturing process is, based here in the US, that's actually going to be a detriment during that time period. So I think some of those industries would be like the apparel industry, the beauty industry. I see that there's a lot of room for growth in that space during this time period. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then I think also possibly when it comes to any sort of food products, because obviously people are going to be concerned about health and safety of, well, usually I buy my milk powder from X country, I'm not going to name any, but from X country, and they might be worried about that at that time. Like, I don't want to be buying milk powder that might be contaminated and then be feeding that to my baby. So I think that this could be an opportunity for a lot of those newer brands, newer Chinese brands that are focused more on like health and quality, like the food brands. I think that could be a big opportunity for them as well.
To summarize, in body, on the body, in body, right? Kind of industries. Absolutely.
Right. Anything that maybe could be contaminated if it's coming from outside of the country.
Yeah. The topic that I think very few people cover, and I know that you're extremely passionate about it. We've been friends forever, and I'm following you on Instagram, and every time, and you're married to a lovely Chinese gentleman, and every time I read your posts, I just see so much passion on the topic, discrimination, and when the COVID broke out in China initially, and later on started basically spreading around the world. You spoke up about the issue, saying that, hey guys, why are we having this conversation? Why are we discriminating right now? What's the problem? And tell us a couple of those anecdotes that you had with also your husband or with people around you. Tell me, basically, what do you think about this discrimination issue? Why people reacted so angrily towards this outbreak when many other countries had outbreaks of similar or even bigger scale, but never so publicized, never so global, etc. So what is your take on that? Do we really have this discrimination bias towards Chinese?
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, recently, thanks to our lovely president, the situation has actually gotten much worse. And unfortunately for the Asian community here in the U.S., most your average American cannot tell the difference between a Chinese person, a Korean person, a Japanese person, even Philippine, Singapore, it's Asian is Asian. And so unfortunately, even though, a lot of the anger is directed at the Chinese community, right now, really it's the entire Asian community that's getting hit because, ignorant, upset people here in the U.S. are looking at an Asian and just assuming that they're from China. So I mean, unfortunately, the discrimination has been going back to since when the virus first started in China. Then it was really focused. You saw, unfortunately, a lot on university campuses because it was happening right around the time of people coming back from winter break, and it was right around the time that the virus was starting to become public, and people were really concerned that their fellow students had come back from China and were carrying the virus, and that's understandable, except for the fact that people were going to extreme measures. People just their attitudes towards their fellow Asian students and Chinese students, and just the fact that even the University of Berkeley, their
I saw that
center,
announcement.
Yeah, their health center said that they put out an announcement talking about trying to comfort students, saying it's okay during times like these to feel stress, to feel hopelessness, and then they had a line that said it's okay to feel xenophobic or afraid of your Chinese classmates, and it's like, no, that's not okay. And so a lot of people were really just incredulous that such a high level university with such a large Asian population could think that it was okay to put something like that out. And they got a lot of backlash for that. But I mean, unfortunately, that was really just the beginning. A lot of in Asia and especially in China, it's very common, even before the virus, to wear face masks as a form of protection in a public place, whether it's summer, winter. If you're not, and I think all of us know, if we've lived in Asian societies, that people wear them not even, maybe they're not sick, they're just afraid of getting sick from other people. Whereas
or
in
maybe
the
it's
US,
the season. Maybe it's the season.
Right.
I mean, people wear it for many reasons. A lot of celebrities wear face masks not to be recognized. A lot of bloggers, a lot of people wear it because they know they go to Chinese doctor, and Chinese doctor tells them, hey guys, you probably 上火了, or you have something, so you're not sick yet, but put on a mask to protect yourself, or it's a changing season, stuff like that. So yeah, I totally get it.
It's it's just, and here in the US, there's just like this stigma. I mean, so like I said, I live in upstate New York, and I've heard from my friends down in New York City that now everyone in New York City is wearing a mask, but still here in upstate New York, nobody's wearing them. Nobody's wearing it. It's full blown in the virus period. But so what I was going to say is, when this was initially all starting, the Chinese community down in New York City was very proactive, and people were starting to wear masks around. And then they were getting even more discrimination because people were saying, oh, you're wearing a mask, you must be sick. Like, why are you out in public? You're sick, don't, and they're like, no, I'm wearing this to protect myself. But because they were Asian and wearing the mask, people just assumed that they must be sick and walking around with the virus, and then, closer to home, like you said, we've had some firsthand experiences with it. My husband was at work last week, and a customer came in and said, oh, you look dangerous, I need to stay away from you. And my husband, he is Chinese, but he hasn't been back to China in 3 years. I've been back to China more recently than he has. Ironically, his coworkers had recently traveled down to Florida, which is, an epicenter of the breakout. But this customer didn't say to his, Caucasian coworker, oh, you look dangerous. He just saw my husband and straight to his face said, you look dangerous. And, my husband called him out on it and said, that's not funny. And the guy just tried to laugh it off as a joke or whatever. But it's, yeah, it's real. Unfortunately, it's getting more and more serious here right now. So
What do you
luckily,
think? Yeah.
mhm. Oh,
What do you think?
luckily, as of last night, the president might have started to realize that calling it the China virus is actually causing a lot of issues. He last night or yesterday in a press conference, he actually, and also a Twitter post, he actually came out and said, Asian people are wonderful. We need to, it's not their fault that this virus is happening. We need to protect the Asian community. So somebody must have started to get through to him, and I really hope that he's going to change his rhetoric and recognize that his arguments with the Chinese government are really actually having a huge impact on the Asian community here in the U.S.
Absolutely, absolutely. And do you feel that this is a part of a bigger problem? Do you think this will also impact the way both local Asian population and the, let's say, overseas students or those that aspired to live and work in the US will stop coming, will view US as the less attractive place? Because that's what I hear from a lot of places across Europe and Australia. Some Chinese families that wanted to send their children to the US, they're right now saying, okay, we can go somewhere closer to home, we can go to Australia, we can go to some friendlier places, or we can even stay in China and basically stop with this international global education nonsense, because right now the world is so unfriendly towards us Asians, and wherever we go we are the bad guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of sentiment has been growing, over the past couple of years, really. But I do think that unfortunately this is going to cause a lot of concern among Chinese families. Let's just hope that maybe the election next fall will turn things around. That's all I think we can really hope at this point, that somebody else will come in and try and mend some of the relationship with China, because if the president keeps going the way that he is right now, I do think that people are definitely going to be concerned for the safety of their children coming over here, especially since the majority of schools are in those big cities like New York and LA, San Francisco, a lot of the areas that have been more heavily hit by not only the virus but the racism. And like I said, unfortunately, a lot of people are getting severely impacted by the virus, losing their jobs, really struggling at the moment. And we're only a week or two into like the really heavy period here in the US, and there's already a lot of anger and resentment. So unfortunately, the president has really kind of given people permission to blame that feeling and blame their hardships on the Asian community. So I am pretty concerned about it, but fingers crossed it'll turn around. Yeah.
Well, the hope is there. The hope is there. Let's hope for a strong candidate. Beautiful. And actually, earlier today, I spoke with a friend of mine, as mentioned, from Shanghai, and he started telling me these stories about foreigners living in China right now, actually, and also being discriminated for being foreigners, because they are, for instance, right now not allowed into some shops, some restaurants, or even some like estates, because they say, oh, because you're a foreigner, you might be the imported case, or you might be hanging out with other foreigners, or going to a restaurant where all the other foreigners are. So essentially, what was very interesting to me, how he said that what he's waiting for, because he was yesterday turned down from an apartment block where his friend lives because he was a foreigner. So he said, I'm actually waiting for this issue to escalate to the point where the government steps in and does a public announcement saying from all the official channels, be it social media, TV, etc., that guys, chill out. If the foreigner has the green pass, meaning he hasn't left China, etc., foreigners are our friends, etc., etc. So on our communication and our chat about discrimination and how this all escalates across society, I believe that government does have that voice and also a bit of that responsibility to calm people down. And let's hope that in the US it's also going to get better very, very soon. Thank you very much for taking this time. out and enjoy your home office, and definitely stay safe. We're going to chat again real soon when things are going to improve, and when we're going to see more of that new normal shaping both in mainland China and the rest of the world.